Back on 88.7 KWDM The Point, we have another edition of Fourth Quarter Friday. I'm Ian Nelson alongside Johnny Reynolds and Cole Sunderman. We have a great show because this weekend on Saturday, it's the final weekend of college basketball, and it's one of the best games of the year. It's the Final Four, the Fighting Illini of Illinois taking on the Huskies of UConn in the first matchup. And then the nightcap, it's the Arizona Wildcats taking on the Michigan Wolverines. It's going to be a great Final Four weekend, and we can't wait to get started on this show.
Yeah, it's going to be a really great, slate Saturday night before Easter Sunday. So this is a really great weekend for all to say, really, because, you're starting off with an amazing game in Illinois-UConn, and I think one of the best things about this Final Four, yes, it's there's that 2-1 seed matchup in Michigan and Arizona, but it's really anyone's game. I know there's some favorites within Michigan and Arizona, but all of these teams have really started to heat up. We've seen UConn and that, historic comeback and that, crazy shot they had in the Elite Eight to send them to play Illinois, and then this Illinois team who hasn't had necessarily a gauntlet of a schedule throughout the tournament, but they've been able to get to the Final Four. They beat a pretty good Iowa team, and they're looking to do something. This is, a coach who played at the junior college level and finally has that opportunity in the Final Four, and he wants to make it count against a historically really good UConn team the last few years.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going into this Final Four wishing that Arizona-Michigan is the national championship game instead of just the national semifinal. And there's a little bit of truth to that. Arizona and Michigan have been really a step above, but UConn and Illinois, they're in the Final Four for a reason. They're no slouch. They didn't just luck into this. Like you said, Illinois, they've had a little bit easier of a schedule, but you still have to win your games. Like Houston, they would be in a very similar kind of schedule, but they weren't able to execute. They weren't able to win their games. So down the stretch of this tournament. So I think that this Illinois and UConn game, whoever does win this game, which both of these games are toss-ups, which is great. We're going to at least have one just complete classic. And whoever does move on, it's not just going to be a team that you're just going to walk over. It's not going to be like the Final Four a couple years ago where it was like UConn, FAU, San Diego State, those teams. And this year, this is a really strong Final Four, even if maybe the seed line for a team like Illinois doesn't show it.
Yeah, for sure. Like you mentioned, kind of is a national semifinal that really could be the national championship. Michigan and Arizona, those are two teams we've talked about all the way since January, really, especially that the emphasis on Arizona. A lot of people thought maybe this could be an Arizona-Duke final. UConn was able to pull away in that one, and I think, kind of like I mentioned earlier, I know these 2-1 seeds are probably the favorite. They're probably going to get it done. I had Michigan winning it all, but don't be surprised if you see a team like Illinois, able to really shock the world as a 3 seed, or UConn. They've shown they can do it. They have the talent. So I think that's what makes this Final Four very good, and I don't think it's talked about enough.
Yeah, and I think a really interesting thing to watch throughout this Final Four is just the size of these teams. Arizona and Michigan, they're the very clear, big size advantages, but also UConn and Illinois, they're also two pretty big teams. But I will be interested to see how well the front courts of these teams are going to be able to establish themselves, because especially Arizona and Michigan, who have some of the best front courts in the country, they've just really been able to lean on that size. And even for Arizona against a team like Purdue, they were able to lean on that size, and then the guards were able to get going. So it's going to be interesting to see how each team is going to be able to really run through its front court, and I think that whoever's front court is able to really open everything up for the rest of the team, I think they're going to be the team winning the national championship.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And I think the size advantage that we've seen in these games have been so important, and definitely from Illinois. And I've done a lot of research on this Illinois team the last week, and just on how I'm really hyping this team up and thinking they could do something really special here, just because of the talent they had. You know, the storyline is really good. You always kind of see that one team with a really good storyline and a hungry side. You know, this team was a 3 seed. They've had great wins. The Big Ten has probably been, you know, other than the Big 12, the best conference in basketball this year, and finally stepping up in that fact. But I think the way how they played against Iowa, you know, they were down the majority of the game. I mean, the first half they didn't even have the lead, but they were able to use their size and really chip away and go for the win. And I think that's what makes this team special. If they can do that against UConn, you get that first game down, and then you might have a shot against a team like Michigan and Arizona where you can really size up against them.
But you got to be careful if you are Illinois in this UConn game, because you talk about that size advantage. When you look at UConn's Elite Eight game, they had the size disadvantage against Duke. Duke has having quite a few of their guards really being super tall, and their forwards in center area. They don't really play with the center, more of just like 2 forwards that are really big guys. And UConn handled themselves very well, especially in that second half. They just kind of let their speed take them places, and then they started to shoot the ball very well. So I think if you're Illinois, you kind of have to play this almost like you did against Iowa, where you just stay in the fight and then you chip away in that second half, where you really tire out a team that can shoot the ball very well, which UConn has shown they can do. But if you're Illinois, you just got to stay big, and then in those final minutes, you shut the UConn down completely on offense, and they can come away with a big win.
Yeah, and you mentioned that defense, and that was really what impressed me a lot down the stretch of that Iowa game. They did have a very clear size advantage, but even though they kind of came into that game, you look at their offense for Illinois. They're one of the most efficient offensive teams in the country, if not the most efficient offensive team in the country. But what has really brought them to this next level and gotten them and lifted them to the Final Four has been that defense and showing that they can do it on both ends. So if they're able to really do the same thing that they did against Iowa, which is obviously going to be a lot harder with not just being able to lean on their size, but as much. But if they're able to do that, then I think they're going to win the game.
Yeah, so a bunch of big games, or I guess 2 huge games on the men's side of the bracket, which will be closing. We'll give a big national championship preview on Monday for Before the Buzzer. But moving on, there's a really good game for the Valley Boys Soccer. The reigning 4A class champs, and then some other games that happen in Class 4A that we need to talk about to just kind of give a little preview of the season, because there's been some shockers already in the first week of it. But starting out, Valley started their season with all their starting games are going to be on the road, which is you could say not ideal, but they really showed some strength going on the road at Cedar Falls and winning a big one, 2-0, in their first matchup of the year. They were supposed to have another one tomorrow, but that one got canceled, so they'll start it back up next week.
Yeah, Sadi Ramadani with the goal there for the Tigers, the sophomore, able to really start his campaign well. I mean, this Tiger team, obviously we haven't really talked about soccer at all, but the emphasis is huge. Soccer here at Valley, obviously the defending champions, a really fantastic season last year led by a lot of great seniors, and it's exactly how you want to start off the season, you know, beating a strong-sided Cedar Falls team on the road 2-0, and you're really going to get, you know, kind of a gauntlet of games here. There was the Iowa City West game that was scheduled for tomorrow. It is canceled, so you get a little bit of rest, but you have to play against a good Ankeny team. They have also lost a lot of seniors, so I think it's really about the seniors this year stepping up and showing what they can do. I mean, Eric Faust, really one of the prominent and dominant players for the Tigers, he might be out for the entire year. So there needs to be other guys to step up. You got to play Ankeny and then play Dowling Catholic, which this Dowling side was very hyped up towards the beginning of the season. However, Roosevelt kind of shocked them. That was a huge win for them on Tuesday, I believe. They beat them 1-0. But this Tiger team, they really do have the means to run it back.
Yeah, and you mentioned this schedule and just how they handle it. That's really when you're coming off of a season like they did, where you win the state championship. It's always those first couple games of the next year after you lose a lot of seniors and some key players. That's always one of the biggest stretches of the year, seeing how you can really elevate, because it's easy, especially after winning a championship, to really get complacent and just settle with where you are and say, yeah, I'm good with what we did. But getting off with a solid win against Cedar Falls 2-0, that's a really good sign for things to come going into this next tough stretch.
Yeah, and I mean, if any listeners remember from last year, it was a little bit of a shock because they started the year off 0-1. It was kind of a very similar game where they had to go on the road at Ames, and Ames shocked them off. Very similar to what I'm feeling this Dowling Catholic Des Moines Roosevelt game could potentially be a 1-0 scoring margin, and the lesser team, as you could say, kind of got the better of them in the opening game. Valley was able to right the ship to start their year this year, winning 2-0. But one of the other big games that we needed to talk about was on Thursday, yesterday, and Urbandale, the reigning 3A state champ, they moved up to Class 4A this year, just playing with the remainder of the CIML teams, having to play Southeast Polk in their season opener, a conference opponent at home, and they lose 2-0. A big shocker for a team as good as Urbandale is, who has shown just how dominant of a program they are when it comes to soccer. Because in the many years that they've been on 3A, they've been so dominant. Their first year coming up to 4A, and it's a struggle out the gates.
Yeah, that is a huge win for the Southeast Polk team, a really big confidence booster, kind of putting their name out there. And like nobody, in preseason has talked about this Southeast Polk team, and obviously preseason rankings, they don't mean anything. We all know that, and it all matters about how you play in the regular season. But this is a team that Valley has to play in a couple weeks, and that could be an interesting game because that's right before the Valley Invitational. So they're going to have a bit of a gauntlet schedule of games. I mean, these guys are used to playing this type of schedule. A lot of these guys are ECNL players in club season, so they play a lot of games throughout the weekends. But it's all about staying locked in and getting those wins, because if you go on a little bit of a slump, you don't want this Valley team to slowly fall off and get a bad sub-state, because that is super significant. However, this Urbandale game, like you were mentioning, Ian, a huge shocker, because this Urbandale team just beat East 9-0 earlier this week. And Des Moines East, I mean, they've had a couple really good seasons, and there's been a lot of hype towards this Urbandale side, and it kind of shut them up with that Southeast Polk win.
Yeah, and that's really a loss that as you take that step up, which is it's obviously a very tough thing to do, jumping up a level, but it's not impossible to really have success very quickly, and it's really going to be one of the bigger storylines this year of how Urbandale is able to really get going in this first year that they're in 4A, because if they're able to continue that success, I don't really see any reason why they can't be one of the classes of the 4A division as well.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, there's so many really underlooked teams. It doesn't really matter where you're from, and we've seen the story of Des Moines Hoover. Last year they had a bit of a scandal with a player who they believed was about 21 or 22 years old on their high school team. So really a huge story there. They were suspended for the rest of the year. But they're back in action in 3A, and they played Northwest, and that was a really good game at MediaCom Stadium. But Northwest Wolves were able to get it done. That's going to be a team Valley it has to look out for. But this Hoover side is historically very good and great coaching. But it's going to be a really interesting season. We'll keep everyone updated. But quickly, I want to move on to the girls' side of things. A very good team.
Yeah, the girls coming in as the number 2 ranked team in the state of Iowa in that Class 4A. I believe it's 4A for girls soccer.
3A,
Is it
my
3A?
bad. Yes, yeah.
It's all the conferences.
Yeah.
They're all different
You
per
never know.
sport. Never know, but in the highest class division for girls, it's 3A. Valley comes in at that number 2 spot. They ended last season kind of a little less than what they would have liked to have finished. They fell in that state semifinal matchup, and now they're coming back and ready to start their season strong.
Yeah, it always feels like this girls' team has a lot of hype around them and just hasn't been able to really get the job done. It's harsh to say, but it's almost like, the football hype. Obviously, nothing against the football players or whatnot, but there's always the hype. Can this be the year they win the state championship? They have the talent. They have the means, and I think you can say the exact same thing about the girls' team. I mean, they're very strong. They already have college commits as juniors. I mean, this junior class is very talented, very skilled, and very fast. So I think this could be a potential year, but we haven't seen any opening games yet from these girls. So it'll be very interesting to see how they play against Ankeny on the 7th. And then they have a huge Ankeny Centennial Invitational where they will play Cedar Falls and then Pleasant Valley. So those are 2 games that are also very significant. You could easily see this Tiger team starting off 3-0.
Yeah, and when you have such a talented team, it's really just at the start of the year, I always just use the word interesting because you can't really. It's hard to use. You don't know anything yet, so with so much talent, you don't ever really know how well a team is gonna gel. And this girls soccer team has had a lot of success in years past, but obviously a little earlier of an exit than they would have liked last year with the loss in the playoffs. So it's really going to be interesting to watch how they just bounce back from that and how they're going to be able to use that talent and really move together. If they have to really be a team. It can be really easy as one of the more talented teams to be just a team of just a bunch of individuals. But if they're able to really gel as a team, this is definitely one of the favorites in the state to win it all.
Yeah, I mean, a really good coaching staff that they have. There's always been great years. This team typically always makes the playoffs for soccer, so they're trying to gel together, like you said, Cole, and it'll be very interesting. They have, a very difficult schedule as you get towards the end of the season. I mean, you're playing Johnson, Ames, Waukee, Dowling, and a pretty good DCG team, but don't be surprised if this team really gets it going, or they could have a little bit of struggles. But it just matters about getting a good sub-state. Obviously, that's miles and miles away of games, but you want to set yourself up for success this season and not be in a point where you're just surviving to win games to try to get a decent sub-state, because this team is so much more than that.
Yeah, and if you do lose a couple games, you really can't be disheartened by that, because obviously you want to win every game, but that's obviously unlikely. But if and when you do lose some games, you can't let that run into 2, 3, 4 losses in a row, because we've seen how much strength of schedule matters. And if they can just get through this schedule and just fairly unharmed, that can really set them up really well for sub-state, and then if they can make it to state.
Yeah, quick to mention these next 3 games. Like I was saying, I think this Tiger team could definitely very winnable games. Obviously, as a second ranked team other than Northwest that they're going to be competing with all year. They play a fifth ranked Ankeny side at Ankeny. That's not going to be easy. Cedar Falls is ranked 11th and Pleasant Valley is ranked 9th. So it's really nice to see these teams being able to compete against teams on the eastern side of Iowa because these teams don't really meet as much. We've obviously seen it in basketball with the whole Valley Boys situation. City West obviously ranked very high, had I think 11 wins, and then Valley was able to kind of school them. So it'll be nice to see if these Eastern Iowa teams are actually legit or not, and Valley can prove it next week.
Yeah, taking a look around the remainder of Valley sports, our own track insider, Johnny Reynolds, can you give a quick insight on how Valley track's looking so far this season?
Yeah, the track team, the coaching staff is definitely excited on what's to come. We've already had a couple qualifications on the girls' side and the boys' side for the Drake standard, which is absolutely by no means not easy to get. Makayla Layla Schuer, I believe, in the hurdles, and eventually I think he might have got the jump already. I have kind of forgot about that. Then Morgan Carr got in the hurdles, and I also believe they got a relay. I'm not exactly sure the relay, but it's been a really good start for the boys and girls side. They're hoping to get as many athletes to the state meet because obviously that's what matters the most. They're obviously scoring a lot of points now. But you need as many athletes to get there to score those points at the state meet. Top 8 is where the points are at, and you're going to need some victories if you want to contend for a trophy, which is not easy to do. But on the distance side, Thomas Limbeck had a very strong race at the DCG Invite, running 4:25. I believe he's just inside the Drake top 21 right now, but everything can fluctuate. So he's looking to punch his ticket for the 1,600-meter dash at Drake Relays and also try to get his 3,200 down to hopefully head to Drake. But it's been a very strong start. Obviously, a lot of meets canceled so far, but I think it's really excited to see this Valley track team kind of turn around for the best as there's been some years of some struggling.
Yeah, continuing to look to Valley athletics in the spring season. Valley girls golf, as many may not know, boys golf is always in the fall and girls is in the spring, at least for the higher classes, and the girls will start their season on April 13th, so not next week, but I believe it's the week after. They'll start their week, and they are very excited as they have one current player inside the top 26 of all girls golfers. Divya Bragarva is a 1-star currently as a junior, so that is very good to see. The progress will continue, and there's really some unknown. We know that the girls golf team has been good in the past, really off the back of a couple of seniors who graduated last year, so not much to know about the remainder of girls golf, but there are some promising prospects in that sophomore and junior class who are ready for a big year. And then finally, on the boys tennis side, as also another sport that have switched, girls was in the fall, who did very well as they made it all the way to the state championship, losing to Waukee Northwest in that one in the fall. The guys will start their season. They've already started practicing, and they will start their first meet on Tuesday, taking on the Indianola boys tennis team at Indianola, starting at 4.
Yeah, really exciting, spring sports that in past years we might have not talked about much, but I know our goal is to really involve Valley athletics more, and we're actually hoping to do some of the Valley Fest soccer games, so stay tuned for any information and update on that. We're really going to get involved with the soccer team this year, boys and girls side. I mean, this is very exciting. These two teams have a legit shot at both winning a state championship, and that would be really awesome to see, especially as a senior.
Yeah, and it is just so exciting seeing, especially the soccer team, which we're going to be getting so much more involved with this year, how there is really a team that's contending, because we've been going through the winter, and it was very rough at times, especially with the boys team. They went 2-20, and the girls team, the girls basketball team, they were very up and down. So it will be very exciting that there really has a chance to be both the boys and girls being two of the teams at the very top of the state.
Yeah, moving on just to a broader aspect of college sports, really around the state of Iowa, more central to the Iowa State women's basketball program. They took a tough loss in the first round to Syracuse, and since that point, really this week, very similar to the football team, but this time there was no coaching, I guess you could say, reason for it. Just a bunch of players from that team, most notably Audie Crooks and Addie Brown, have entered the transfer portal and will look to find new homes next season away from the Iowa State women's basketball program. Many people question if it was because Fenley was retiring, and Fenley has announced that he's coming back, staying, and will coach next year. So really no understanding of why at this moment of time, but there will be a whole new lineup very similar to what we understand about Iowa State football starting in a couple of months with a whole new roster.
Yeah, and this once Addie Brown transferred, because before she transferred, she was really the first
Big
star.
Yeah, star.
Like there were a couple of bench players and players that were just leaving for more playing time, but once she left, she's probably the most versatile player on the Iowa State women's team last year. And Audie Crooks, obviously she's great on the offensive end, but she has a lot of things to work on defense. And once Addie Brown, who really the whole team ran through, once she transferred, that's where the dam really broke. Then Jada Williams announced her intent to transfer couple days later, and then Audie Crooks, she took about, I think it was 10 or so days from the last game of the year. She was everyone really knows that she was really on the fence about this, and I'm sure at some point she will come back and get a standing ovation in Hilton Coliseum, but it really won't be the same. She won't really have a chance to be, that name in the rafters, that Hall of Famer. That's kind of out the window now, just for 1 year, and obviously she's going to get a lot of money from one of the top programs in all of women's college basketball, because she was one of the most recognizable faces in the entire country, and it's just this has really become a disastrous offseason for the women's team because of how many just nationally recognizable faces that there are. So it's really tough, and I'm sure Fennelly will get a team together. They're not just gonna not have a team.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be really tough next year, and I think it's really unfortunate. It's like the football team. They went from being a team completely full of seniors and one of the top, trying to contend for being one of the top teams in the Big 12, like the football team was before Campbell left and then everyone transferred. And it just hurts as an Iowa State fan, because there was so much potential that was coming back. Everyone was a senior. Everyone would have been already together for 3 or 4 years, and now that's completely off the table. Like the football team, they're just trying to get to a bowl game now, and the women's basketball team, I think all they're trying to do is just get to the tournament and they'd be happy. So it's gonna be really tough, but I still have hope with Bill Fennelly as a coach, because we know just how long he's been able to sustain success and get the team to the tournament.
Yeah, a little shining factor on that. Ariana Jackson, Des Moines native, who's played at Iowa State since her freshman year, has announced her commitment to stay, really has loved the Ames roots that she has now built and will stay for her senior year. And assuming they don't pick up any humongous star, which you don't know. Bill Fenley could pull a diamond in the rough, but Ariana Jackson looks to probably take over that leading role. She was getting increased minutes as the years gone by, but it's not able to put up as many points, really staying about that 5-6 points per game. So potentially breakout year. She was one of those players that would come in for about 3 to 4 minutes multiple times a game and just be there when they needed.
She was just a spark plug.
Yeah, spark plug. Need there when they needed a quick basket and then couldn't consistently keep scoring. So hopefully she and the remainder of the Iowa State women's basketball team can build up something strong. Also on the Iowa State basketball, there really hasn't been any news from the Hawkeyes side much, but and not so April Fool's joke, Kyle Green, a 5-year Iowa State assistant underneath TJ Otzelberger, who played and coached at UNI for the longest time, will now move over and take that head coaching spot at Northern Iowa after their head coach will move on to take a head coaching job. Where was it?
Utah State.
Utah State.
That's a really good job. Lots of fan engagement over at Utah State, but it really does.
It's a little sting.
Does hurt for UNI, but for UNI, like there's new blood there, and it felt
Yeah,
like
picking
it
up-
could be getting a little stagnant. So it
And
might have
picking
been
up
good for both sides.
a really good head coach, Kyle Green, has been a fundamental part of that Iowa State assistant coaching realm, as you can say. And that was as weeks earlier when Iowa State was still in the tournament. Another Iowa State assistant coach, JR, goes to San Diego?
Yep, San Diego.
Yeah, San Diego State. And so TJ Otzelberger continues showing that he can bring in good guys both on the court and on the sideline to really help feed a program. No worry there. He'll be able to bring in some more coaches. But yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say not so fast about an Iowa commit. Real quick.
I haven't heard anything
Yeah.
from Iowa, so. Oh, wait, I did. Yep.
Jaden Kuhn, yes.
Jaden
All
Kuhn.
the Iowa fans were
Yeah.
going
Yep.
crazy.
Yeah,
about this one.
big commit. Obviously, Iowa does not, at least not yet, does not really get the hype and the recruit. They're still working on any bit of recruits they can. But the 6'7" commit,
Some size.
yes, from Storm Lake. You know, he was originally committed to Creighton, but with the retirement of Ben McDermott, he is going to the Hawkeyes. This is a huge commitment for Iowa. I mean, he could definitely see a lot of minutes freshman year with, you know, a lot of guys, you know, aging out really for the Hawks. So it'll be kind of a rebuilding year, you could say, but I think there's a lot of excitement going on for Iowa basketball.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the question. I think that's going to be the question for both of these teams is they're losing a lot of senior talent. Iowa losing Bennett Sturts is that key guy, but also I believe Minyao is heading out. Double check me on that one.
I believe so. I'll check.
Minyao leaving was the other key guy that I remember. Trying to remember all these years is impossible. And then on the Iowa State side, Taman Lipsey gone, Jefferson gone, and then still unknown about Milan Momcilovic.
I still expect him to come back.
Yeah, it's
at
just
this point.
if he gets caught by an NBA team, we'll sign him. Who knows on that factor? But Iowa State fans, if you're into the social media, already trying to look at potential portal targets from those mid-majors that really help build this team into what they are from this year was a team built on a bunch of mid-major. That bottom tier, not much known about any other commits on the Iowa side, but as we know them, we will share them here because really trying to predict what next year will look like for both of these teams. Second year under Ben McCollum and TJ Otzelberger trying to get past that Sweet 16 hump, finally get into that Elite Eight, which has eluded them for almost 20 years now.
Yeah, Menyao is a junior, so he
Menyao
will
junior.
be back. But yeah, this Iowa State and this Iowa team, they're going to be very different. I think Iowa is gonna feel the effects a little more with Bennett Sturts leaving. He was one of the best. He was one of the best players in the country last year. And Iowa State, if they can get Momcilovic back, they'll still have a guy that they can kind of build around and have a lot of those freshmen with guys like Torrey, Bateman, Plata, and then hopefully Buchanan comes back for his senior year. So Iowa State really does kind of have that foundation, which is really what McCollum still has to build. He still has to prove that he can win at the Division I level, because the Division I level is just such a different animal than Division II. It's obviously still incredibly impressive what he did over at Northwest Missouri State, but it's still going to be really, really a test for Ben McCollum to see how well he can build a roster in this era of college basketball.
Yeah, and finally, some big news for college basketball. First, Cameron Boozer is the 5th freshman to be named AP Player of the Year. And then also still in the tournament, Tommy Lloyd of Arizona, the head coach for the Wildcats, who are going to play tomorrow against Michigan, finalized a new deal with Arizona to become one of the top 5 highest paid college hoops coaches in the nation.
Did you guys happen to see the? We're speaking of deals here, but totally different. Totally different sport. The Kirk Cousins signing.
Kirk Cousins
I
signing.
mean, that is ridiculous. Yes.
Is just incredible. He was with Washington for so long there. He scammed the Vikings too, and then the Falcons. He just was. His career earnings have to be through the roof at this point, and he's a mediocre quarterback. In his prime, he was really solid, but he's been a mediocre quarterback for so long now, and he's still getting these huge deals. So credit to his agent. He's one of the real MVPs of the NFL this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is shocking because he was pretty much a backup the whole last year. I mean, for really the past 1.5 seasons, he had some really shining moments at the Minnesota Vikings, but never really got anything past the divisional round, let's be honest. But $172 million deal for 5 years. Kirk Cousins is at least, I think he's about 36 years old, if I'm not mistaken. But that is a huge deal. I don't know where this money is really coming from the Raiders, but they're trusting Kirko, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have that many players, so that many like really solid players to pay a whole bunch of money to. So there's a lot of money there. But when I first saw that this deal was made before the real numbers were out, it was like, oh yeah, he'll just be a bridge quarterback for Fernando Mendoza, so then he can just learn behind a veteran, which totally makes sense. But then when you see the numbers, it's a little head scratching. You still know that Kirk Cousins is probably going to end up being the backup in a year and a half, 2 years, but it's still, those numbers are just crazy high for what his role is gonna be.
Yeah, he's 37. Kirk O'Chains is, and I mean, you mentioned it. That was my question. Is the Raiders have pretty much already stated that they're going to be picking Fernando Mendoza. Yeah. Now, if there's a situation from the past couple of years where that doesn't happen, we don't know. We'll talk a little bit about that when the draft.
It would be so silly if they didn't.
Yeah, draft gets closer, but it would be pretty silly to not pick Fernando Mendoza, the number one quarterback, the number one player in the draft as of right now. And I mean, when you pay a guy that much money to not be your starting quarterback for at least the better part of his first year with the organization.
Yeah, I'd assume they start Cousins for the first few games
at least first few games.
At least the first year.
Like,
I'd be surprised if not. Like,
if they don't, then you mentioned Kirk's agent needs to get put in that Hall of Fame because getting paid $172 million to be a bench warmer is craziness.
Mike McCartney of Vayner Sports. There you go. There's a shout out. He does incredible work.
Yeah.
Yeah, $34 million a year, and he probably is going to sit the bench for 4 of them.
Yeah, a good better part of those 4 years. But a lot more to talk about on that transfer portal for college basketball. some draft news will continue to be coming in with the NFL draft being in a couple of weeks, April 23rd, 25th. When that gets closer, we'll talk a little bit more, give our own mock drafts for that first 10, 15, potentially even first round, depending on how long we want the show to run. But yeah, a bunch of great news. MLB baseball has started. I think I mentioned that on Monday. But we're really starting to get into the roll of things now. So these spring sports are starting to get hot. But that's all we have, folks. Remember, Final Four is tomorrow, starting at 5 is the Illinois-UConn game, and then 7 o'clock is the Arizona-Michigan game, and then Monday we'll have a big national championship preview. But all of that and much more right here on 88.7 KWDM The Point. Thank you all for listening to another edition of Fourth Quarter Friday. I'm Ian Nelson alongside Johnny Reynolds and Cole Sunderman. Have a great weekend and keep rocking out with 88.7 KWDM The Point.